this session? Okay, all good? All right, thanks everybody for coming. My name is Don Elmore and I'm the moderator for this session. It's entitled Designing Your Inclusive Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Using Technology and Data. And I'm very happy to welcome David Ponraj. He's the CEO of Startup Space. We've gotten to know him well, as have a couple other centers in the state. Startup Space is a wonderful entrepreneurial ecosystem and portal for your community. I'm not paid to advertise that. I just like it anyway. This will be an interactive session and it'll be recorded. You'll be able to get the video after the conference is over. So we encourage you to ask questions when we have the Q&A open, and I don't exactly what kind of format David is going to use, but you can raise your hand using the button at the bottom of the page if you know how to make your way with Zoom, and we'll call on you and unmute you if that's the format we use. If you don't want to speak, you can always use the chat box and we'll get your question to David. And so with that, I want to once again introduce David Ponraj, CEO of Startup Space. David, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Don. And great to see some familiar faces. I see Erica's on. Hi, Erica. See Mitch is on. Hey, Mitch. And let me see. Oh, I see Mark Petrelli's on as well. Hey, Mark. So some familiar faces. Hopefully this presentation is useful to all of you. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we use Startup Space today to help connect the ecosystem, especially for small and micro businesses, as a way to help small businesses across the spectrum. Because while the SBDC does so much great work and you support so many small businesses, there are also some businesses that you might not be able to support because they're either too early in their work or they might not be a good fit. But because you provide such an important support structure for the economy, you can be what we call the front door into the ecosystem. So how you can help connect the entire ecosystem so that no matter who comes in through your front door, you'll be able to either help them or be able to point them in the right direction. And so I'm going to share just a little bit about what we've learned working with about 25 different SBDCs across the country. So I'm going to share some real life examples of SBDCs that already do this work. And Mitch and Don already use our system in their communities. We'll be doing a presentation like this with a national SBDC in a month from now, where we'll be kind of diving a little deeper into how we've been able to solve problems specifically for people of color and other underrepresented communities that might have even greater disadvantages or challenges in finding the right resources. So, but today we'll focus a little bit more on the tools and technology, and I'll try to keep it generic enough that if there are specific challenges you have, we can dive deep into it, or otherwise it'll be like a broad-based approach on the solution that we've been able to introduce in the marketplace. So with that, first, a little bit about me. My name is David Ponraj. I started this business 3 years ago. And prior to that, I led market research and innovation for Nielsen, the market research company, looking at cutting edge solutions that come from startup incubators on how to better measure markets. So Nielsen, if you've heard of it, it's a market research company that measures what people watch and what people buy in the stores. And so we looked at cutting edge technology around computer vision, artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera, on how to better measure the marketplace. I quit that job to start this business. And very early on, I found that in the world of economic development, there was a big gap in data and analytics, how to measure impact, especially around small and micro businesses, because a lot of them are tinkering in their garage, they're solopreneurs, they might not have a business license. And so how do you measure economic activity in small and micro business communities? So we came up with a system that essentially provides plumbing lines into the community. So I'm going to share my screen and talk about how we built the system. I'm going to bring some examples of other statewide entities like Tennessee, also regional entities like Southeast Michigan, to show how we built connectivity in the community so that all of the partners that support small business ecosystem are able to use a system to be able to do their work. And so I know that there are other systems you all use today, Neosera, CentrIC, Salesforce, etc. This platform is complementary to those systems. So it doesn't take away or doesn't add rework to your platform. And I'm going to first show you one example of such a system, bringing in the statewide SBDC in Nevada on how they do this. And then I'm going to switch back and kind of talk about who we are, what Startup Space is, and would love to get both Don and Mitch's input into how they're also using Startup Space to better connect their community. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and first talk about the Nevada ecosystem. And please feel free to jump in or raise your hand. And Don, since you're moderating, if there are any questions, please feel free to interject. But we'll do about 30 minutes of presentation and then follow up with discussion, but you can interject at any time. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen and you should see the Nevada SBDC network come up. So what Nevada did is the Nevada SBDC, the statewide SBDC, brought together all of the partners across the state and said, everybody's doing their own thing. So if you're trying to start a small business in the state of Nevada, everybody's got like their own portal. And based on who you talk to, you might get a different answer. So they said, how do we rally all of us together and have one way to talk about the entire ecosystem? And so they brought all their partners along. So this is their website, nve.network, which, by the way, you can access also on your own. If you want to view this on your computer, there is no login required. They created this network where they brought in all of their partners statewide. So they brought in their economic development folks, they brought in their chambers of commerce, SCORE, all of the ones that you see in your own community, right? I'm sure a lot of you have SCORE and a local chamber that works with you. There's also an economic development arm in your community. They brought them all together and said, let's have one way in which we all collectively talk about the services we provide for small businesses. Ultimately, by doing that, small businesses can choose what's the best service available to them, and none of the small businesses fall through the cracks. So they came up with this network. These are all their partners, and they were able to have in one place a way to be able to describe all of the services they provided. Now, this is, like I said, just a front door into the community. The community itself is a virtual platform that we'll kind of dive a little deeper into. And I've also got the Bridge Incubator up here, Don. We can also show the Bridge as an example when you talk about it. But this allows people to be able to see local workshops, local pitch competitions, or other programs that are available. And no matter who's giving it, so you can see here the chamber has its events, the work that the SBA is doing in the community, etc., all in one place. So the entrepreneurs ultimately don't have to think about where do I go to find what resource. And this whole thing is powered by the state SBDC. Then they also have their resources. So from here, you can go and find local resources in the community. You can also filter for specific resources that you're looking for. Let's say you're a small business that is looking for industry-specific information. You can actually go in here and be able to find this information. So this is part of the service that we provide. I'm going to kind of switch over and kind of talk about who we are, but I wanted to first kind of give you some insight into what our work looks like. And let me just present my screen and show you a little bit about just who we are, and then we can kind of dive into Don's example, and then we'll continue to kind of talk a little bit more about how we work. So our focus is to create more inclusive and equitable access, focused on wealth creation, specifically in the small business economy. And what we do is we help with providing connectivity, economic impact, and influence. So when you think about your work, you're connecting your entrepreneurs and you're measuring the impact of what you do, ultimately to influence investments back into your community. You're doing this to drive better dollars for programmatic support, for building assets like capital access or technical assistance, etc. And to do that, you have to measure economic impact. A little bit about our team. So we have our team spread across the US. We have Mackenzie actually out of Paxton, Illinois, and essentially trying to work as close as possible to our partners on the ground. And the reason we do this is because studies have overwhelmingly showed that when there isn't local connectivity on the ground and trusted relationships, a lot of underrepresented communities don't get access to the tools and services that are traditionally available. So even when you think of things like PPP, there was significantly less coverage for PPP with Black entrepreneurs and other people of color because there weren't these trusted connectors on the ground. So even though it was a fantastic program, a lot of people of color did not apply for it. And even when they wanted to apply, they didn't have things like, and I know by now this is kind of old news, but they didn't have things like financial documents, cash flow statements, profit and loss statements, etc. And so they then went to borrow from online lenders and other places where there's a lot of predatory lending, and which then further set back their business. And just looking at some of the data around this, most micro businesses need less than $50,000, and in a lot of cases they don't have financial documents ready, and so they were using things like personal savings because they didn't have friends and family to support them. A lot of them used personal savings, and in a lot of cases they went to predatory lenders when they're really looking for one-on-one support. So the access to the resources we provide is not uniform, right? And we need to help level the playing field. And talking a little bit about how we did this, how we are solving for this problem is by connecting the entire ecosystem through these conveners, which the SBDC is a great convener of the ecosystem because you connect all of the other players in the ecosystem so that everybody has a single way to describe the services that is available to small businesses. I'm going to skip through a couple of these slides because I want to get to a couple models of how the ecosystem is connected. So one is like a philanthropy-led model where you can connect the ecosystem by having a central way where you can fund a local resource that can connect all of the providers. So the philanthropy-led model is one, and we'll kind of go through this in detail a little later. The other one is this public-private partnership model, where you can have a statewide entity that connects all of the regional entities in the state, or even when you think of your own region, all of the local resources can be connected together and have a central way to talk about the work you do. In this case, working with Launch Tennessee out of Tennessee, they were able to create a private partnership model that connected all of the resources across the state. And then, of course, the SBDC model, where which I just shared with you just now, where the state SBDC brought together all of the resources across the state and provided a single front door that allows entrepreneurs to easily navigate. And then I'll also show you the backend system for this, where entrepreneurs, once they get hooked onto this model, can actually go and find a whole wealth of resources, talk to advisors, be able to fill out a business wizard that gives them the basic steps to starting a business, etc., and then be able to work one-on-one with a mentor or an advisor to get their business started. And I'll go through this in a bit around how do you then measure your ecosystem. But I want to stop here because I think, Don, here's a great place where you can come in and talk about how you've been able to connect the resources in your community. And then we can kind of dive back into the actual system behind this.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Thanks, David. So we had what we called a virtual incubator website that was already up and had been up for about 5 years. But when I first learned of Startup Space, my first reaction was, yeah, it does all the things that we didn't do. We kind of planned to at a high philosophical level, but just didn't have time, resources, or frankly, as good a plan in order to do that. So our site is built and integrates a lot of startup space functionality. I don't know, David, if you're pulling it up, otherwise I can share the screen and pull it up directly, either way.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you
Okay.
share your screen? Yeah.
Let me pull this up. Give me a second here, and I'll try to talk through it while I do it. But so we had a design that we kind of liked in a lot of ways, but also some things needed to change. So here's what our site looks like. And I'll tell you that it's not complete yet. We've been planning, we initially thought we could do our community launch maybe in June, and it slipped and slipped. And all of us with SBDCs know why things have slipped over the last 18 months, but we're very close. So what we did is we changed much of this top menu. So you'll see that, Steps to Success was something that was on our site, but resources, events, knowledge center, stories, those are all Startup Space components, and Startup Space actually just gave us the code to drop in here. So we could do all these things. So if you want to take a look at something that is sort of purely our site, this is what we had on our site to begin with. So you've got various areas that you can dive into if you're either in business or want to start a business, and that's an example of that. But some of the key things that we've added are things like resources, which this format should look fairly familiar to you based on what David showed on the Nevada Entrepreneur Network also. And Startup Space populated a lot of this for us. They went out and pretty much scraped our community and pulled in a lot of good information, and we gave them some lists of things that they could look at. This menu is something our key providers that existed, our stakeholders that were here in the old site, we wanted to make sure they were still recognized, so we included them here. But the events was totally redone. Our calendar was a little bit basic. It's now very nice, and it's pulled in the calendars. So far, I think of about half a dozen of our sort of key entrepreneurial entities in the community. So there's a lot of stuff that's here. The Knowledge Center includes some of our information, but also a lot from Startup Space that they have pulled in before. And what we need to do is populate it with a few more stories, I think, before we want to launch. We only have a couple in here, but David, we're working on some more. And then, how do you connect? And so you can register as an SBDC client right here, but you can also join the Bridge community, which gives you your own membership on this site and makes a lot of these resources available to you, and groups that you can join and all this. So we were very impressed from the first time we saw it, and wanted to get involved. And so David, unless you want me to show something else, that's really an overview of our site.
Yeah.
And we have,
and I can show you the next piece here, Don. Okay. From here, when they click on join, what happens next with the workflow? I can show that next.
Okay, sure.
Yep. And I know that, I don't know if Mitch is still on. I know Mitch had to drop off. Mitch, do you want to jump in and talk about your work as well? I know you have to drop off in a bit, correct?
Yeah. Do you want me to do it now, or do you want to go through?
Okay. Yeah, you can go through your piece. Yep.
So just real quickly, we've been using Startup Space for a few months now, and like Don, we are working. And by the way, my small business development center is in Northern Illinois in Lake County. So we are working on creating our own website, much like the one that David just showed in Don's Bridge website, where we can kind of create our own look and feel and search engine optimize it, and then just use the features that Startup Space provides to link people through our website to all that functionality. And by and large, one of the motivators for us doing this in the first place was because we have, I guess, a high-class problem in Lake County and I'm sure we're not alone, and that is that we have quite a few small business development resources available, but it can be really confusing for a new business or even an existing business, frankly, to navigate through all the labyrinth of resources that's out there. So one of our the things that we were interested in is having a platform that would make it easier to find this stuff. And then the only other thing I'll point out is that what David earlier talked about, how some of our smaller businesses, weren't able to access PPP loans and other forms of disaster funding, be they loans or grants and whatnot, and were forced to go to, institutions that charged exorbitant interest rates and the terms weren't very good. And so one of the things we're interested in doing over time is to kind of get at the root causes of that and look at things like, well, okay, if they didn't apply because, they don't know what financial statements are required, or perhaps their credit score is not quite right. We want to get at the root causes of those problems and then address those through training and advising and other resources and make those available through this platform. So it's a, root cause analysis of these kinds of problems, and then either designing or sourcing solutions that we can make available through this platform. So lots of good things I think are going to come of this, and I'm excited that we're promoting this platform because the potential is great. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Mitch. I'll pause to see if there are any questions. If not, I'd like to show you a case study of how a community that was struggling to measure impact, how they're using it. And again, this is really not just about startup space, but generally more about how do you use analytics from the connectivity to go drive dollars back into your community. And what you can't manage, you can't measure. So you got to first have the management systems in place. And then what you measure, you can go and improve and tell stories to drive dollars back into your community. So I'm going to show you an example of a community that's doing it in Virginia. But any questions? I know Mitch has to drop in a minute. So any questions so far? Okay, so I'll show you this when it comes to analytics and measurement. What are the kinds of metrics you can track more broadly beyond just measuring just the business advising piece of it? What can you measure once you have a system like this in place? It allows you to better understand the makeup of your community. So not only does this help connect the people on the ground, in return, you can understand who is using my resources, how is that moving the needle for my community, who are these people? Because if you can identify the community, you can actually go and advocate for them. And these kinds of dashboards on our system are generated from users coming and using the system and us being able to understand the persona of the user. So I'll show that to you in a second. But these are the backend analytics around measuring the ecosystem and then even understanding the health of the ecosystem based on the kind of activities an ecosystem does. Here's a snapshot in terms of just hard numbers. Engagement rates, also measuring small business starts, people working on new ventures, jobs created, revenue generated, etc. To be able to, when you want to go tell the stories about your community, you need these kinds of hard numbers that can help advocate for your community. So here in one of these dashboards, you can see activity rates. So how many people are logging in? What kind of work are they? What kind of resources are they accessing? You can also see if people are doing things like business model canvas, or if they're starting ventures, etc. This is actually a snapshot from one of our dashboards. And then in the case of BizNation, so BizNation is a community in Roanoke, Virginia. They run several programs a year. So they run a program called Innovation Mill. They run another program called Gauntlet program that basically brings entrepreneurs into a cohort, and they go through the cohort program. And then at the end of it, the winner gets a ton of money that like, $10,000 and above to be able to go actually do to run their business. their engagements, so looking at 1 year of engagement, they had 760 total users. These are all small businesses in their system that were using the resource platform they had created. And they also track all of their ventures and people talking to their advisors. So 29 ventures, 26 jobs, and $45,000 worth of revenue. And these are early stage businesses. So these are pre-ventures almost, people with ideas that want to get their ideas off the ground. And basically they run these two programs, Gauntlet and Innovation Mill. And you can see here, they actually are able to create profiles for each of their applicants. In this case, this highlights a user, her name is Lisa Broyden. And you can actually track demographic information, company information, events they're going to, programs they're a part of, milestones in their journey, etc. So that you can actually then filter all of that data up to see, who is it that we're serving, and are they actually moving the needle. And then here's a profile of the entrepreneur itself. What programs are they engaging in? What is the name of their business? How, what type of business are they working on, etc. So it's a combination of using social media platform along with a resource platform to be able to connect the entrepreneur to resources and then measure the impact that they're having. So I'm going to switch to so from the Bridge Incubator, from here, if you went to the platform itself, so if you went from looking at the data around small business support, the resources, and then come into the platform, this is where you land. So this is actually the Nevada. So from here, if you go here and click on login, you will actually be able to log into the platform. So when I clicked on login, you come directly into this platform if you've logged in. And here, you can actually navigate to a whole bunch of resources that is being provided by a community. You can also go in and be able to talk to other entrepreneurs in an online forum. You can fill out your venture information. There's a business wizard here that allows you to actually create go through a step-by-step guide to start a business in your local community. So you can come and say, have an idea, and then be able to actually go and fill out this information. I'm not going to fill it out now, but if you filled out this information, you can actually continue to build your business, and it'll give you additional resources for each stage of your business. And especially think about all the businesses that come to you that might be too early, the tire kickers, if you will. You can actually give them this guide as a way to go and first start their work. And then once they're at a point where they do need some real help, like, they're not asking for just how to get an EIN number, which they can just go to irs.gov, right? When they actually want some real help, they can actually come to you and you can look at their wizard to see what are the steps they've filled out and then help them from there. So a great way to provide some self-support or self-help for your entrepreneurs. And then from there, you can actually go and then look for other members in your community. If you're looking for a mentor, you can actually go and say, I'd like to find a local mentor to talk to or a local advisor. So I can come and say, I'm looking for a mentor. And this is actually live. So I'm actually looking at the SBDC network powered by Startup Space in Nevada. And I can actually come in here and you can see when I look for a mentor, I found Jake, who's actually a small business advisor with the SBDC there. And I can actually message Jake and ask Jake for help, or I can message Jake and say, "Hey, Jake, can I set up some time to talk to you?" And this kind of outward-facing asset that allows them to better connect with their community doesn't exist today in Nevada. You can also come and look for stories. You can look at the resource compass I talked about earlier, where you can come and filter for specific resources in your community. So I can come and say, I'm looking for help with capital, and I can search specifically for capital access providers in my community. And I can actually go and look to see, is there anybody close to where I am? So I can pull up a map, zoom in to see around my community who's there, and I can actually click and be able to find somebody that I can call and talk to. And all of these resources are vetted. So these are people that have actually been vetted by the community and are there specifically to help small businesses. You can also do the same thing with events. You can go in there and look for local events, just like the one that you saw outward facing. So the idea is the outward facing website creates the hook because you don't need an account. But once you decide to join the community, you can then come and get a whole virtual world where you can connect with entrepreneurs and providers in your community. And then you can also do that for if you need help with like COVID-19 specific resources. So you can come and look for if I need specific access to like a loan or grant tied to COVID-19, I can come in here and I can actually look for support there. I can also look for resources I can talk to, or if there are guides to reopen available in the community, I can do that. So I'll pause here to see if there are any questions so far on this idea of having a connected system in your community and how this can help both better connect entrepreneurs and then also measure the impact you're having. Well, let me ask a question if there aren't any questions. Is this information useful to you, or is this something that is nice to have, but there are other ways you're doing this in your community that's just as effective?
Well, David, I don't want to speak for anybody but ourselves, but I think it's common that there are a lot of sort of pieces of this, but not one integrated platform. The other thing that was very attractive to me, which I'm trying to be patient until we start getting more information, is the where your Nielsen experience comes out, all the data and the analytics. Many of us were just in a utilizing Neosera meeting, and I presume you've gotten familiar with Neosera by now, but the kind of data that this can produce and the incentive to get people to, join the community, have memberships and report this data is really, really important. So I guess, for us, even in a pretty tech savvy community, the answer was definitely no, this was not here.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll get it a little bit more into the data. So this is the dashboard that I'm showing here is the dashboard from the Nevada ecosystem, where you can actually see how many users they have, what kind of activities they're generating, and you can actually run surveys on the platform that will allow you to get very granular data that you can then use to advocate for your small businesses. I can actually pull up specifically around data analytics. I can pull up a report we just did where we were able to query 750 small businesses in Detroit to be able to actually see how they were accessing capital and how their businesses were impacted by COVID-19, which we were able to then actually go and advocate for better capital access from the SSBCI dollars in their community, which in the absence of this data, they would have done the same thing before. But we were able to actually prove using data that the government needed to better create infrastructure for small businesses. And we were able to actually move the needle for them. So let me show you really quick, just another view of this. And this is going to be a little small, so I'll try to zoom in. But we did a study with small and micro businesses, and we looked at things like employee count, age of the business, communities of interest. So how do they identify themselves, and gender. And one of the things that we found was that a lot of these businesses were focused in between $0 and $250,000, the entire size of the business. In fact, a lot of the business annual revenue was between $25,000 and $50,000. And if you look at it, even businesses here that are greater than 3 years have still revenue under $100,000. And when we shared this data, a lot of people pushed back on us and said, well, if you want a loan under $25,000, you're probably not a real business. But a lot of businesses, especially when you are somebody that's a business of color, the amount of money you need, if you look at this for Black-owned businesses, most of the businesses are less than $100,000 of annual revenue. So the CDFIs were not incentivized to provide loans under $250,000. And therefore, this huge chunk of businesses were all kind of going to online lenders and other predatory lenders for their money. And we were able to show this data from real study done with the small business community to advocate for creating more capital infrastructure that funded businesses with loans less than $100,000, and using the state dollars to actually incentivize CDFIs and others to provide smaller loans, which traditionally they would not have otherwise. So there's a lot of power in being able to actually use data to go and tell stories that might not be apparent at first, but you can actually use hard numbers to say, this is what our small businesses are telling us in the community. And this entire survey was actually run on our platform, where we were able to look at impact of COVID-19, what kind of impact did they have in terms of, did they miss payroll, rent, what did they miss, when do they plan to reopen, what is the decrease in revenue, what industries were these businesses in, etc., which can make for really powerful stories. And there was a silver lining in this, in that a lot of businesses said that they do expect that they will fully come back from the pandemic. If you look at how confident are you that your business will fully recover from the pandemic, most businesses were either somewhat confident or very confident that they will come back. So it also allows us to tell really awesome stories about the resilience of small businesses by doing these very in-depth study that did not take a lot of effort, because they were able to use the existing network on Startup Space to be able to actually go and run this study and then put this output that was shared broadly with their community. So I'm happy to go more into some of these studies if you're interested in, or kind of talk about the mechanism of how the platform itself works. But I'd also like to know, is this something that you're all looking at in your communities, or is there work that's already happening in this space outside, of course, the standard Neosera reporting platform?
Hi, this is Adrian from, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Adrian from the SBDC at the IHCC at the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Chicago. Something that we're doing is, first of all, thanks so much for all that amazing presentation. It's a lot of work to put together all that dashboard. And yes, it's interesting to see how they measure, to put together a system to measure economic impact and the community, right? It's interesting, something that we're working on, because it's really, when we're working about economics, it's really hard to reinvent the wheel, right? There's a lot of theory there, there's a lot of studies. Something that it's been useful for us is we're looking at implementing this Harvard study from 1983 about the 5 stages of business growth and how to measure impact in between time and complexity, how the businesses scale up. So there is a specific benchmark that the business has to meet, so we understand what is the next step, right? Basically, how growth will work in the back end, or the measure that growth will give us. So we're trying to pull all that information for ourselves, just to better understand the needs of our business community and on the ground, right? So what we're using is basically having this information real time. It's giving us the right tools to speak on behalf and make assessment on behalf of our business community. So thank you for that. I just wanted to share that we're trying to adapt the Harvard model to our nowadays, and see how we can implement the post-COVID era to this model, and see how we are adapting that model to small businesses in the post-COVID area, adding benchmarks that is that speaks to the post-COVID situation and recovery. I would like to learn more about the model and how it adapts to the post-COVID situation on your end, because I think it will be like a valuable tool to implement and really understand how the back end works, right? We all are data-driven professionals, so I will be interested to see how the back end is doing it.
Yeah. So for us, Adrian, thank you for sharing that. I did not know about that Harvard model, so I got to go look that up. The way we look at economic impact for us is there are the self-reported metrics. So I'm curious, Adrian, do you do all of this on your own? Is this inputted by you all, or is this self-reported by the small businesses? And if it is self-reported, how are you incentivizing that?
That is actually, that's part of a different program that we here at the IHC we have different programs. I just posted in the chat the link for the 5 steps. That's a well-known 30, right? Business 30. Yeah. No, it's not self-reported. It does not come in a survey. It comes through, as was said before, it comes through creating a relationship with the business and doing it through canvassing, visiting business, being aware of what's going on out there, creating relationships, giving them a call. So you start pulling out this important information, and you're conscious of what the benchmark the business is doing. This is extra to do what we do in our CRM, right? But this gives us as an operator on the ground level the information we'll need to pursue to create a better system, right? So that's why with this system, with this study that I'm showing you about, from Harvard, there's some other studies from the University of Chicago, some other from Aspen Institute or Stanford University, the Latin focus on Latin business. We're trying to adapt that model to create, using data to create this scoring system and give us a real-time data and what a business that from the information we're pulling from conversations, what is the business need? And of course, that will give us the specific profile on the business individually, and in the whole picture, what is the score and what are all the tendencies within the business community.
Okay, no, that's fascinating. One of the things that we've been able to do, just in terms of getting user data, is anytime somebody goes to do a program. So, for example, if you have a grant application, by having the grant application on our platform and the user filling that information in, we get a data point. And then any other time they engage with the system, either come to talk to an advisor or do anything, we get a second data point. And so over time, over like 18 months, we can actually see if the business is being improved based on all of the inputs, the COVID-19 resources, any grants that are being provided, because it's that longitudinal data that's very hard to get. Like a point in time study you can do, but to know about how a business is doing over time is challenging, right? So that's our motivation, is to try and understand, are we creating economic impact over time using levers like whenever anybody talks to an advisor, tracking that ping and measuring, okay, when they talked to the advisor, they said this was the size of their business, this is how many employees they had. Next time they applied for a grant or they applied for any kind of a program, there's a second ping. Now we know, has that business changed at all? And so over time, in some of the cases where we've had clients for at least a year, we can actually see the journey of the entrepreneur as they access all the other resources in the community. So we can actually say, hey, these things are moving the needle, because when they reported a year ago, they were this big and now they have changed in size.
Hey, David, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
How's everything going?
Good.
Well, I'm glad you're still smiling after what we've been putting you through with our Illinois procurement process. But I did want to just jump in here if I could and just let everybody know that we are trying to move forward on a project with David in terms of our network and basically creating a super hub for the Illinois SBDC, and then tying in, of course, Mitch and Don already have, hubs that they're doing in their local area. And then, we would look to kind of also put additional hubs throughout the state of Illinois as well. So we are trying to move forward. We've just had a number of challenges with our Illinois procurement process that we're continuing to try and work through. And David, I appreciate your tremendous patience in working with us through this process. And but we'll get there. It's going to take a little longer, but we'll get there. So anyway, I just want to let you guys know that. And again, we'll keep everybody kind of up to date as we move through. Obviously, you guys also should kind of stay in touch with Mitch and Don as they launch and really kind of get their hubs deployed in their areas as well. So, but I think I don't think we feel like that we could, because of the size and the many resources and organizations that are in Illinois. I don't think we feel that we're going to have something that's going to have everything in, but we really believe that utilizing the platform, we can make some great improvements in terms of pulling a lot of these different organizations together at both the state and kind of the regional levels. So again, just stay tuned for more as we move forward with the process. But I do really appreciate you being on and sharing, David, with about the startup space and the things that you're doing. So we appreciate it. But I did want to let everybody know that we are trying to move forward on a significant project with you if we could ever get there. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark. I didn't want to steal your thunder, so I didn't say anything because I figured you'll jump in and say this. So it's amazing news for Illinois. I think overall it'll help connect all of the resources across the state, and ultimately your entrepreneurs will benefit because they can now be able to find, if I want to do work in the city of Chicago, I can go to the statewide network and be able to find the resources in Chicago, or if I want to do something in Champaign-Urbana. So having this connected network, really, which is what even the SBA is trying to push through their community navigator program, which is this hub and spoke model. It's amazing that we were already moving forward with Illinois even before the SBA came out with this model, which is the ability to have a hub with the spokes where all of them are kind of talking about the same ecosystem and being able to get data back and forth from the hub to the spokes and back. So yes, and we have no problem. I'm just making sure that we get all of the paperwork in as fast as we can. So hopefully we'll have some good news soon on that front. Awesome. Okay.
David, I'd like to go back just for a second, and you may want to move on from this topic, but I was fascinated by that survey that you showed. It was very similar in intent to something that we did the end of last year for, the impact of COVID on businesses and what they thought their prospects were. And by comparison, I'd be interested in you telling me sort of how long it took to plan it, execute it, gather results, because for us, it was 4 different municipalities, 3 additional organizations, including our EDC, that had to design it, reach out to get participation. I think you said 715 businesses, I think. We did all that work and got about 400. And it was a major undertaking. So can you just sort of compare how that could be executed in a startup space hub?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll do one better and actually show you the final recommendation paper that we put together, because it'll be fascinating. And I'm happy to share this with you all after the call. Don, I can send it to you to send it out to everyone. But this is the paper that we actually shared with the governor of Michigan. And it has all the questions that you just asked. What we did, Don, is we actually worked with several partners. So we worked with the University of Michigan. We worked with consultants from Boston. We worked with chambers, with specifically women's group, because we wanted to have like a broad coverage. So let me see if I can go to the next page. So here's a background on that survey. Hopefully it's big enough for you to see. It was funded by two different foundations, the Wilson Foundation and the Kresge Foundation. And we started this in mid-November and went through January. And then 750 was across the region, but we wanted the data to be primarily from Wayne County. So we whittled it down from 750 to 590, specifically for Wayne County, because there are also other counties in the region that responded. And the way we got to this number was by really working with all of the other partners, which is what is really critical when you do these massive surveys, is that you need the regional business support organization. So these are in Michigan, SCORE, the SBDC, all the other local providers. There was Build Institute. If you know, Detroit, there's several big ones. There's DGC, Detroit Economic Development Corporation, etc. Worked with them, and we were able to go directly to small businesses because all of them gave us the contact information for all of the small businesses that had applied for COVID-19 support. So we actually reached out to 3,000 small businesses, out of which we got 750 to respond back to us. We also reached out to University of Michigan and others to also kind of help us get the data out there, or the survey out there. And then from there, we were able to get to that crosstab, which then we whittled it down to basically what the key findings were around capital access and technical assistance. And then from there, we actually had just a set of recommendations, if I can get to it. Let me see. Okay. So this is the recommendations we came up with and we actually presented this to the governor's office. One was to create loan and capital access programs exclusively for micro businesses. We found that a lot of the businesses that were called small, because you look up to 500 employees, you kind of lose the businesses under 9 employees. So we said, when you say it's a small business program, can you actually find a micro business program to specifically focus under 9 employees, creating incentives for CDFIs and other nonprofit lenders, again, to provide micro business loans, and then fund programs for increased capacity, capability, and competency around these nonprofit lenders. The nonprofit lenders, in some cases, had the program, but they didn't have the capacity to process loans. In some cases, they didn't have all of the people in place or the capability to process it. In some cases, they didn't have the training to process this information. We also said, can we bring in innovation to fintech and online lenders with the right guardrails? So there's no predatory lending, but at the same time, small businesses love online portals for loans because it's a lot easier than having to go to a bank, etc., when they don't have that banking relationship. So continue to look at online solutions. And this was the one that is tied directly to the SBA program, the Navigator program. Invest in trusted connectors on the ground. So continue to build up the technical assistance network by funding SBDC advisors, SCORE mentors, all the other people that actually have the interface with small and micro businesses. And then these partner networks as well for wraparound services, and then also better define micro business. There's so many definitions, which then when the policies come out, the policies are all not still focused on micro businesses. So better define micro businesses, because when we asked the government to define it, they had their own definitions of micro business that continue to hurt the very small businesses. So I don't know, Don, if this answers your question. I can send you this document after this call, but the key was to have the network already in place so that you can actually get this through the network partners out there. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. That actually where I was going with it was how easy and efficient it is to do something within startups in your own hub because of the participation you already have. And so I think that's also true. This was a little bit different study, but it's very important to me for another reason, because I'm talking to some groups about CDFIs and dedicated funds just like that. So yeah, I would be glad to see that. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And like you said, this whole study was built on Startup Space and published, and then the data analytics also came back. So it was like in one place. And that allowed us to collect additional data on those micro businesses. so that when they come for the next grant program, we now have the analytics from when they answered the questions during COVID. So we now know what their impact was during COVID. The next time we survey them for another program, we'll now have a second data point and know, did any of the programs that were provided during COVID, did it provide any lift at all to these businesses? Any other general questions or specific? I'll be happy to share all of this content after this call, after this presentation, so Don can share this out to you all. You'll have these studies. Or are there any other best practices that you're all using around connecting your community and measuring? We'd love to know that, just as a way for all of us to know what else is out there. Okay, so Don, if you think it's useful, I can go a little bit more into the data analytics, and if not, let me know if we can focus more on the front end. Where do you think it'll help?
Well, I'm going to ask for a little bit of feedback from, we have 30 plus people on, and there's sort of some very different areas of focus where you could spend your time. So I am curious to see what people are interested in most, sort of the hub and the interface and the community aspect, or more of the analytics aspect. So why don't we give it 10 seconds or so and let some people pitch in. Otherwise, keep going with your own momentum. Whatever you want to cover, you can cover. We have just over 15 minutes now. I'll give you about a 5-minute time when it comes up. But yeah, please, y'all. Chime in and let us know what you'd like David to talk about. Got 1 vote for analytics. And 2. Okay, we've got Adrian, who just spoke, and Earl Steiner, who's from Danville. So you got 2 votes for analytics so far. So I would say, in the absence of any other feedback, go with analytics.
Okay, all right. So I'll keep going with analytics. So on top of to get to that kind of data that I was referring to, you've already seen this dashboard. Every community has a dashboard where you can actually go in here and you can customize the metrics that you want to track. So I can actually go into dashboard settings and pick from a whole bunch of metrics that my community wants to track. And you can simply turn these on or off. And you can also go and create custom analytics. So for example, one of our clients, which is a veterans center at a community college, they use this to track their specific programs. So they have a program called Strive. They can actually track, which is a veterans program, how many people are participating in Strive, how many people are graduating out of it. Before, they were using Excel files for some reporting, Google Docs for some reporting, etc. And when the time came for reporting, they couldn't make all these systems talk to each other. They came in here and they actually built their own custom dashboard. So they can see how many people are starting ventures, how many jobs are being created, revenue generated, funds raised, even mentoring hours. You can actually track how many hours of mentoring support are we providing, how many mentors and advisors do we have. But then on top of that, they're able to actually drill down to specific programs and be able to see within these programs what type of users are available. So this one is a customized dashboard that you can actually build so that you can get rid of all the other pivot tables, etc. But the secret to all of this is there's actually a CRM that powers the backend. The CRM allows you to be able to actually see individual users and how they are interacting with the system. You can also see if they are part of any other programs. You can actually go click on the CRM information and be able to see demographic breakup. You can also see if they're part of any other communities, events they've taken, surveys, etc., and be able to get like a snapshot of how they're using the ecosystem. And if they fill out this information over time, it'll actually timestamp any changes. For example, with income, if they fill out 2 surveys, it auto-populates, and if the income is on the question, you can actually get 2 or 3 timestamps of income over time. So you can actually see, has their income gone up or down as they access the programs that you're all providing. So being able to tie a CRM to your tool. So the one that Don's been talking about is the survey. So being able to tie a survey to a CRM allows you to you don't have to duplicate your entry, and it'll continue to, every time you ask a question, be able to take a snapshot of that answer and put it into the CRM by user. So when you click on a user, you can see all the surveys they've filled out and has any of their information changed over time. So you can see this group it's a group that provides grants for entrepreneurs called Prosperous Detroit. They use this to do all of their technical assessments. They also do it to do their project check-ins, etc. By having all of their surveys run through Startup Space, you can actually have all of your analytics built into one place and not have to have multiple files that you're tinkering with. The other place where we collect analytics is, let me see if I can go to a client to show you how it works. So you can also go and track over time your business wizard. So if somebody's filling out your business wizard, you can go see that. And also under business advising, you can track when somebody is coming to you for help one-on-one. So with that veterans group, you can actually go and see all of the sessions that people have had. You can go to the advisor dashboard and see all of the advisors, how many sessions they have had. And you can see how much hours, how much time they've spent, etc. And then the entrepreneur themselves can also see the work they've done with you, which a lot of platforms, Salesforce, Neosera, etc., don't allow the entrepreneur to get a view into this. The entrepreneur can actually go in here, go into their own profile. So the entrepreneur can sign into their account and be able to see all of the touch points they have had with their advisors. So every time an entrepreneur talks to an advisor, it also provides that information in their profile. So they can see over time all of the engagements they have had, how has their information changed, how long have they been talking to an advisor. And so it creates a more transparent system where all of the parties are incentivized to keep using it. So in this case, Jason can also go and update his own information in his venture every time he talks to an advisor. And there's a lot of confidentiality here. Sometimes if the advisors only want to talk to each other without talking to an advisee or a mentee, the advisors can actually put confidential notes in the session. When they go to create a session, they can actually go in there and check a box that will make it confidential, that can be only between the advisors or can be only between the advisor and the venture owner, so other people can't see it. So there's still a lot of confidentiality involved, but this allows you as a way to track over time everything in one place. And it is basically somebody doing their work, and in the process of doing your work, your information gets tracked. Which then ultimately ends up in the CRM, and the CRM then rolls up into the dashboard, and that's where you get to see real-time analytics about all of the work that you're doing. So I'll stop sharing. I know we've got just about 10 minutes left. If there are any questions on the analytics I've shared, happy to kind of dive a little deeper into that. Okay, so I'll just share one last thing in terms of closing, and then would be happy to follow up afterwards if you're interested in knowing more. Let me just see if I can get to this really quick for you all. There is a white paper that we wrote around how do you build and measure communities. And so I just want to quickly share that with you. Let me see if it opens up really quick. And I'm happy to share this this white paper after the call. But when the SBA came out with this program, a lot of people came to us and asked us about, how do you build these virtual communities, and how do you create buy-in between all of our stakeholders? Because it's not just about building this. How do you also get people to then actually use the system, right? Like, how do you get people to in your community, your stakeholders, to be able to tell the same story, use your system that you're investing in, etc. So we wrote a white paper around how do you create what we call inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem, where your entrepreneurs and your stakeholders feel like they're part of the same community. And I'll share this with you after this call, but it looks at the role of technology. It also looks at the role of connecting your stakeholders, and ultimately it talks also about the reporting component. How do you report? And it has several case studies. We looked at Oklahoma City, St. Paul, Minneapolis. We looked at also NACI, which is a national organization for community colleges for entrepreneurship, how they use our platform to connect their entire network. And I'm happy to share this with you all after the call. And if you've applied for the Navigator program, I know there's a statewide Navigator program as well through Illinois, or there's a national one through the SBA. This would be a great kind of a guidebook on how do you actually go about implementing it once you either won the grant or won that award. With that, Don, back over to you. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to a late afternoon technology presentation. That's not always fun, given it's so late in the day. But thank you for listening. Hopefully this has been useful for you. I'll put my email address in the chat. If you'd like to connect directly with me after this, feel free to do so. But Don will also have all of the content I presented today that you can use for running your own centers, or for just in terms of educating around what's available in the marketplace today.
Okay, thank you very much, David. First of all, I'll remind everybody that this is recorded, and so you'll be able to access this session after the conference is over. I also really will sincerely encourage you. I've answered a couple of questions in the chat while David was talking, and would be happy to answer more. I won't speak for Mitch, but he probably would be as well. I know there's another hub, isn't it Fairview Heights, David, down in Southern Illinois, that Joanne May and her SBDC has been involved with. Their relationship is a little bit different than the ones that Mitch and I have. But this has been really exciting sort of to work with. I'm eager and anxious and even a little bit frustrated to get ours formally launched. And that white paper David just produced will be helpful in us doing that. But please, send me an email. I'm easy to reach if you have questions, but David has also made himself available. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that. So I'm going to say we have, unless David, if you have anything else to cover, we do have about 7 minutes, but otherwise I'll take a sort of last call for questions, comments, etc., and maybe save everybody just a few minutes. All right, let's see. I've got something in the chat. Let me see what we've got here if we need to address it. Oh, everybody's just thanking you, David. That's always good.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so thanks again. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see most of you at some point again tomorrow. So take care. Thank you, David.
Yeah,
bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
David.
nice
Thanks,
evening.
Don.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you guys. Take care. Have a good night.